Hi everyone, welcome to the next screencast on education. This one's about ethnicity and educational achievement. Learning focus this week is what differences exist between ethnic minority groups, what are the external factors that impact on these differences and why do they have an impact, and can we offer any sociological theory to help analyse and evaluate. Some facts and figures there for you from a study from the Department for Education and Schools. As you can clearly see, just looking at this quickly, Chinese ethnicity and Indian ethnicity outperform all other ethnicities when it comes to getting 5 or more GCSEs A star to C. And as we will also see, red is higher on each one, meaning boys do worse than girls. 3 types of external factor: cultural and material deprivation. We've covered a bit, so we'll just rattle through that if we can. And then a bit of an idea about racism and wider society has an impact. So, Burita and Engelman, Bernstein and also Boca believe that intellectual and linguistic skills are the thing that are holding people back at school. One of the major barriers and things that affect whether or not we do well at school. Now, there's an idea that if you speak a second language at home, then that has an impact because that language isn't the spoken language at school. But it has the same impact theoretically, according to the Swan report and also Gilbert and Merta, as if you are speaking restricted code as opposed to elaborate code. So maybe it's an idea that it's a social class thing rather than an ethnicity thing. Especially when we look at the idea that Indian pupils, according to Gilbert and Merta study, do so high and are high achievers, and as we see from the last slide, that Chinese students outperform all other ethnic groups, and they don't speak English as their first language at home. The attitudes and values also have a major impact, and there's an idea that from cultural deprivation is that there's a lack of motivation. Different ethnic groups are socialized differently with different attitudes and different values, and they might not match the attitudes and values of school. So again, already on the back foot. That you could link this in with Hyman as well, I suppose, Feinstein. All of these theorists that we looked at when it came to attitudes and values from a few weeks back. Arnott believes that the media have a major impact and role to play when it comes to this idea about anti-school subcultures. Anyone who listens to rap music, watches videos, etc. on YouTube or MTV, you will see that there's a very anti-establishment, screw the system message, where I wasn't given anything as a kid. My mum dragged me up from Brooklyn or the East End of London, and I got to where I got today, not with no help really from the system. And this gives particularly black boys this reinforced idea that that's how they should act. Linked closely with the ideas of attitudes and values is this idea of family support. Moynihan believes that because many black families are headed by a lone mother, this indicates why they underperform in school. But it's not because of their ethnicity, it's more down to the fact that they have financial problems. So the mother might have to go out to work, meaning that there's a lack of support in the household with homework and other educational activities. Also the fact that they might not be able to afford these toys and ability to go to these intellectually developing places such as art galleries and museums. Moynihan also sees that there's a big impact because there's a lack of a male role model, particularly for boys, and that this is one of the reasons why boys struggle with discipline in schools because they're not used to it at home. Charles Murray, New Right, also agrees with Moynihan's idea that this unstable family, a lack of a male role model, has a negative impact, particularly with black boys, and that they find status and also this role model in other areas which tend to be negative, but also that they fail to really deal with this discipline within a school environment. A bit more information there about family life. So Flew believes that it's definitely the cultural differences, it's not the education system that is at fault for this. Scruton believes, however, that it's a failure to embrace British culture, as British culture is taught so much within schools. If you fail to embrace British culture, you're already going to be on the back foot. Similar to if you fail to embrace British language, you're going to be on the back foot. Price believes it's more to do with how different ethnic minority groups deal with racism and adaptations to cultures. Um, Asian pupils have a greater self-worth, and this is because they are not dragged down by racist behaviour towards them. This stems, in Price's eyes, back to colonialism, when the British Empire kind of took over these places where they were native to. The difference is that black people in Africa and also in the Caribbean were treated as slaves and kind of imprisoned, and they lost a lot of their culture and identity because of that, and their language. Yet Asian culture and language was kind of left untouched and unscathed, and because of this, that Price believes that they have an ability to deal with racist behaviour towards them a lot better than black ethnic minority groups. So on that note, there's a great focus on, well, why do Asian families Asian children, do so well in school? And these theorists believe that this is all down to the family. So if we look at Driver and Ballard and also Lupton, there's this idea that within an Asian household, it's instilled to them that adults are the authority, be that your parents, your grandparents, or be that teachers. And because we, as Asians, they say that at home, they can adapt to the authoritarian figure at school a lot better. They are taught to respect teachers and taught to respect their elders. There's a greater support network because there's less lone parent families in the Asian community. So that means that they have help with homework and things like that. Kahn, however, sees all of this adult authoritarian and tradition and control as a negative thing, and it leads to stress to achieve, stress to comply, stress to do what it is that you're told to do. There hasn't been much focus on white ethnic group, but cultural deprivationists do look at this because they believe that it's a class thing more than necessarily an ethnicity thing, and it's been found that white working class people have a lower aspiration level than other ethnic minority groups. And the Sutton Trust in 2004 found that 80% of 11 to 16-year-old ethnic minority pupils wanted to go to university compared to 68% of white pupils. Now, if you don't aspire to go to university, you're going to have an attitude of, well, what's the point? Why should I bother? I'll just get a job. I'll go and work wherever when I leave school. And you're not going to try as hard, and you're not going to try to aspire to achieve that thing. Evans believes that one of the reasons white pupils underachieve at school is because their street culture is so brutal, and that white working class children have to adapt to this. They were kind of thrown on the street, and it's like, dog eat dog, and only the tough survive and stuff like that. And because they've adapted to that and the street culture, they bring that into the school culture. So they have a negative idea about authority on the outside. They're going to have a negative idea of authority on the inside, and this is one of the reasons why they get excluded so much. This is one of the reasons why they're in such bother when they're in school. So some criticisms of the cultural deprivation theory quickly. Driver believes it ignores positive effects. So one of the reasons why female black ethnic minority girls do so well is because they tend to come from lone parent families who are headed by a female, and they maybe see a positive role model there. Kerry believes that it's very much based on a blame culture, so it's pointing the blame at things rather than dealing with the reason why it's happening in the first place. And it's about difference, not deprivation. And then that becomes an internal factor, because Kerry believes that schools are ethnocentric and they don't teach a wider culture curriculum. It's very based on white culture. Some might say, well, it should be. We're in a predominantly white country, but you still need to take into consideration that people are going to underachieve if it's not geared also towards their needs. And Lawrence challenges Price's idea about this adaptation to racism, and actually says, well, racism is to blame completely. Some research that was carried out by Flaherty in 2004 highlights differences in material deprivation, and this is used to highlight that it's a social class thing rather than an ethnicity thing that is to blame. This one report in 1985 said that social class differences accounted for 50% of the differences in achievement between ethnic groups. So there's a strong focused from the material deprivation side that it's a class thing rather than an ethnicity thing. However, Gilborn and Merzer, I've just realised I have spelled Gilborn wrong, argue against the Swan report. They say that social class factors don't override the influence of ethnicity, mainly because, you know, if we look at different ethnicities, even middle class black people do comparatively poorly at GCSE to other ethnic groups. So it's not down to social class. If you have the fortune and the finances to be able to do these things, such as go to galleries and have books and activities and stuff like that, then actually it still shows that there's ethnic differences there. Final thing we're going to look at is the idea of racism. Now, some sociologists, such as Mason, Rex, and Noon, believe that the idea of ethnic minorities being deprived both intellectually, linguistically, and also materially through poverty and housing is a product of racism within society. Rex believes that racism has led to social exclusion and poverty, and this is shown in the type of housing, areas that ethnic minority groups live, the type of jobs they have, and ultimately the type of education they have. Interestingly, Rex believes that this happens both inside and outside of the classroom. We will look at the idea of institutional racism in education a little bit next week. Rex believes that this is a contributing factor. Noon in '93 carried out an interesting little study to show that there was institutional racism within employment, where they sent out letters to 100 different companies, but alternated between the names, as you can see, Evans and Patel. The replies to the apparent white candidate, Evans, were more helpful and informative than they were to that sent back to Patel, which suggests that companies act upon their stereotype and interpretation and possible institutional racism towards ethnic minority groups. You could draw from this that, well, what is the point in trying in school if I know my employment and career opportunities are going to be limited because of my skin color and my ethnic group? This could quite well have an impact on educational achievement and could help us suggest why these facts and figures are what they are. That's it for this week. For the lesson, can you please bring your files, and I need you to have evidence that you have addressed some of the feedback that I have given you on some homework or essays that you've had in the past. It doesn't mean that you're going to do it in class. I want it to be done beforehand, and I will be asking you for those at the beginning of next week's class. I'll see you all next week. Special shout out to my Tuesday afternoon groups. Bye bye.